Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon to some, good morning to others, and good evening to others who are all on this webinar. My name is Karen Bland, and I'm the president of the Organization of Women in International Trade International. We go by the name of OWIT, and we're very happy to have this webinar today to honor our recipients of our 2003 awards. Just so you know, give a little background on OWIT. OWIT is a voluntary nonprofit organization of women and men who are involved in the fields of international trade and business. And we have more than 2,000 members who are all affiliated through 28 chapters globally. So if you want to learn more about OWIT, I definitely encourage you to visit our website at www.owit.org. Now on to our presentation. As some of you may be aware, for several years OWIT has annually recognized individuals as well as our chapters who've made significant contributions to the enhancement of women in international trade and business. And today we are pleased to honor the 2013 OWIT Award recipients. The recipient of our 2013 Woman of the Year Award is Meg Jones, and the 2013 Chapter of the Year Award is the Association of Women in International Trade, DC, which is our local chapter in the Washington, D.C. area. Catherine Robinson, the president of WIIT, is here with us today to accept the award on behalf of the chapter. So before I introduce our award recipients, I'd like to address a few housekeeping items. Just a reminder that today's discussion is off the record and there is to be no attribution to either the speakers or the organizations in which they are employed. The program and materials are protected by U.S. copyright law, and they may not be reproduced, distributed, transmitted, displayed, published, or broadcast without the prior permission of OWIT. After the end of both honorees' presentations, we'll have a brief Q&A session, so feel free to submit your questions in the chat box and we will receive them and direct them to our panelists. And finally, I would like to thank our webinar sponsor, Sandler Travis Rosenberg, for supporting this webinar as well as our entire webinar series for the past several years. It is through this sponsorship that OWIT is able to offer these webinars at a free rate or such a reduced expense. So now on to the awards portion of our webinar. As mentioned earlier, Meg Jones is our 2013 Woman of the Year. As the Woman in Trade Program Manager for the International Trade Center, Meg is a shining star in the field of women's economic development and entrepreneurship. She's an epitome of OWIT's mission, and we proudly honor her with this award in recognition of the amazing work she's done to secure concrete business contracts for women-owned businesses globally. So Meg, thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. It's indeed a very great pleasure to join you on this webinar today. I'm deeply honoured to be recognised as the OWIT Woman of the Year for 2013. As you know, I have sat on the board of OWIT for 5 years, many years ago though now, and I was the inaugural president here at the Geneva chapter in Switzerland. So I understand something of the process that you go through, the search that you do to find appropriate candidates, and I know that you take this very seriously, and I'm honoured to be honoured by the women on the committee and those that you represent for this award. So thank you very much. I've been asked to say a few words about the work that I do and how I've managed to achieve this over the time. So just very briefly, now I run the Women in Trade program at the International Trade Center, which is a joint agency of the United Nations and World Trade Organization based in Geneva. The mission of our organization is to help small and medium-sized enterprises in developing countries achieve export success. And so within that, ITC is very much concerned that women, as well as men, are beneficiaries. And when you think this through, this very much makes sense in the context of the overall mission of the United Nations, which is, of course, very established post-World War II, to ensure peace and security. And when you think of the role of women in peace and security, typically after conflict, it is women who are, to use the phrase, left holding the baby. Wars typically kill men killing men, and women are left to carry on. And carrying on means caring for the family. Carrying on also means contributing to economic, post-conflict economic reconstruction. So women have a very strong role, and yet unrecognized role to play in that scenario as well. But across the world, if you think about the role of women and the role of women's entrepreneurship, it is critical for two very important factors. One is as a contribution to economic growth and job creation. All countries around the world, not only those that the United Nations focuses on, are very much concerned with how to achieve economic growth and how to achieve job creation. So within that, it's very much SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, that are at the nexus between economic growth and job creation. When entrepreneurs are successful, this is how you get businesses hiring more people, and this is how you see that linking up to economic growth more broadly. However, women's entrepreneurship has been very much overlooked in this context. As many of you know, women lack access to finance. Women are typically not on the title deed of properties or so on, lack collateral and so on. Also tend to be outside the mainstream loop of things. In many countries, when you walk into a chamber of commerce and industry, you will see mainly men in the room. And lots of very good solid information about, for example, government tenders, other corporate tenders, business opportunities basically, are passed through these mechanisms. So this brings me back to the role of OWIT and the reason why I joined OWIT in the year 2000, that's some 14 years ago. I joined OWIT because I firmly see that women, the value of women getting together to support other women, and then when you have an organization, as you do in OWIT, it's a perfect conduit for the receipt and flow through of information from members to other members. And this can be information of all sorts. It can indeed be about business opportunities. I remember one of the first OWIT conference I ever went to was in Dallas, Fort Worth, and most of the topic actually was revolving around the new CPAT regulations which had been introduced in the United States. So many of us from abroad who work in export, who work in trade, were really privileged to have access to first-hand information from those who were designing the rules at the time on what the impact on business would mean, what the security checks would mean, and so on at the ports and so on. So, I mean, OWIT has been a very valuable, does play a very valuable service, both in terms of professional development. But, I mean, you've honoured me as Woman of the Year, and what I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on was reflecting on what that might mean and what that could mean to other people. Look, I am very proud of the work that I have done in my professional career. I've represented my country at the United Nations. I've worked at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. A long time ago, I worked in the financial markets. I wrote my thesis, the politics of Islamic banking. I've done, it's no doubt about that, I've done quite a few things, and thank you for acknowledging that. But I really do think what it takes to be Woman of any year is to be able to juggle both your work life, your volunteer life, and your family life. And what I found with the OWIT members that I have worked side by side with for many years has been women who are able to take their energy to the limits of where it can go, taking into consideration their family and their work commitments to give to other people. And I think it's the selflessness that I've seen in OWIT and in other women's organisations as well that is actually changing lives. I think it's when we actually are honest with ourselves and with each other about how we can best contribute to the future of others that we start to find ways forward together, and we can put together meetings or projects together that benefit a great many other people. I was the president of the local chapter here in 2001 and 2002. That's more than 10 years ago, and I still have people come up to me and thank me for the friendship that they found within OWIT 10 years ago. Newly arrived people to Geneva who didn't know the community here at all, or maybe looking for jobs or looking to meet a contact or so forth, those who had jobs who were looking for contacts, and they found that within OWIT. And because I led the executive committee for 2 years, I know the work that goes into events management. And I know when people come in, they're nervous and they don't know what to do. And I can tell you, and I'm sure you know, no matter what your skill set, just about anybody can make badges. And these are the jobs at the end of the day which seem small, but those contributions also are very much part of the smooth flowing of a meeting that does contribute what we want to contribute at the end of the day, which is the transfer of information to members. So I think what I wanted to say here was really for those who are listening on this particular webinar, no matter what your skill set, it all starts with something small, and gradually over time and through the connections you make through women's business organisations and associations like OWIT, which, as we know, is a group of women united around the globe to foster trade and the advancement of women in business. This is how you do achieve change. And with a strong base in OWIT here in Geneva some 10, 14 years ago, I've managed to build on that over time. We have managed to give back to the community here as well. Every year we've run something on International Women's Day on a topic related to trade, brought in partners and so on to help expand the pool of those who understand the importance of women's entrepreneurship to the economy, particularly in terms of contributing to economic growth and to employment creation. So I'd like to thank OWIT for what it is that you've given me over the years, and I'm delighted to be here to offer a few words to give back. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Meg. I don't think OWIT could ask for a better promotional to really show what we stand for, and importantly, how our members really drive OWIT and make OWIT the successful organization that it is. And again, we are so very pleased to have the ability to honor you this year, because you are definitely, as I mentioned, the epitome of what OWIT stands for. So thank you very much. And so now we'll turn to our next honoree. That is our 2013 OWIT Chapter of the Year. And this year, as I mentioned, the award goes to WIIT DC, our local chapter in the Washington, D.C. area. WIIT is one of OWIT's largest and oldest chapters and consistently serves as the standard bearer for all of our other OWIT chapters. WIIT's represented today by its president, Catherine Robinson. Catherine is a seasoned government affairs professional. She's currently employed in the International Government Affairs offices at Amgen Incorporated, which is the world's largest biotechnology company. I know for a fact that she is a road warrior, and that she spends a great deal of time traveling the world representing the interest of Amgen. So we are very honored to recognize WIIT DC and Catherine for their dynamic chapter activities that help make OWIT an even stronger organization. And I now present to you Catherine Robinson.
Thank you, Karen. That's a great introduction, and I'd like to thank OWIT and Karen for recognizing DC and for all the great work that OWIT does for all the individual chapters around the globe. You know, I'm honestly accepting this award on behalf of the entire DC chapter. Without them, it would not be possible for WIIT to carry out the activities that it does or to receive this recognition. So I'd really like to thank all the great work of the WIIT volunteers in Washington, D.C. I'd also like to also recognize the important relationship that the Washington, D.C. office or the Washington, D.C. chapter has with the umbrella OWIT organization. I think we were able to learn a lot of great new ideas from the other chapters around the globe, and it's really a great partnership to have the larger organization to work with. So I just want to recognize all the other chapters as well for their contributions to the organization, and I think together we're all much stronger. If I can, I'll go to the next slide. What I'd like to do today is to tell you a little bit about WIIT DC, to tell you a little bit about what makes us unique and some of the successes that we've had. But I'd also like to talk about some of, I think, the challenges that the DC chapter faces and how we are addressing those and trying to move forward to maintain the excellency in programming. And I'm sure some of this will be very familiar to some of the other chapters and people on the phone, but I also hope that maybe we can, share some ideas too and see how others are addressing what I expect are similar issues within the organization. So WIIT DC is, as Karen said, one of the largest chapters of the OWIT organization. Currently, we have around 350 members, and that includes a wide variety of women and men in the Washington, D.C. area. So we have folks from government, from the embassies, from law firms, from companies, from NGOs, students. We really have a very, very broad group of members. I think one of the things that WIIT DC is very proud of is our programming. It really, I think, has allowed us to be successful in the Washington, D.C. area. There's a lot of competition in this space and from other similar organizations, and so our programming really has kept us relevant. And we have over 20 events a year, anywhere from small events with 10 people to large events with 150 to 200 people. So it's great. Another thing that the DC chapter prides itself on is our professional development, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail later. And then lastly, we have significant engagement with the U.S. government and diplomatic community in Washington, D.C., and I think that's one of the greatest benefits that we offer our members in D.C. So the next slide, please. One of the things that makes the DC strong and that has really allowed us to develop a strong reputation in Washington are our programs and our professional development. And so I'd like to just talk in a little bit more detail about that. We host monthly luncheons and on a variety of different trade topics. And we also have smaller, what we used to call brown bags, but we have recently renamed those trade talks, where we either do them in the morning or at lunchtime on topics of interest that are relevant at that point in time. And we usually invite government officials or experts from the business community to talk about why the issue is important and how it's going to affect the international trade community going forward. It provides a lot of opportunity for our members, one, to learn about an issue if they aren't already aware of it, but also to have direct access to the government officials that are going to be working on the issue on behalf of U.S. companies. And so it's really, I think there's a lot of return for members in that regard. The other thing that we do really well is our professional development. We have a range of programs that are designed really to advance members' professional growth, and we do that through a lot of how-to events, mentoring, and job banks. And I remember when I first joined WIIT, I was probably about 12 years ago, and one of the first professional development events that I went to was how to negotiate your salary. And it was such a great event because it talked through how women are usually the first to just accept whatever offer they're given, and they never fight for themselves to, position themselves. And I think one of the things that we've all learned is when you start a new job, where you come in really sets the stage for how you're going to advance going forward in that position. And so that event on how to negotiate your salary and your benefits package was really critical and really helpful. And so it's those type of events that we offer. Actually, next week we also have what we're doing is a speed dating mentoring session. So it's hard to get mentors to be able to commit time for an entire year with an individual, just given everyone's workloads. But what we found is that you can do it in short spurts. We're able to offer a lot more to our members. So what we're doing next week is a speed mentoring session where we will have about 25 mentors in a room with about the same number of mentees, and they will have 5 minutes with each person to talk about what are some of the keys to their success in their jobs and how they were able to get started, really whatever the mentee wants to ask. But that way they'll get exposure to 25 WIIT members at once, and we think that's going to be a great success. Another thing that really I think that has allowed us to be successful in DC is we have a quarterly newsletter. And what that does is that allows us to highlight the work of our members, what they're doing in the community. We get to highlight the programs that we've had and any new hot trade issues that people should be on the lookout for. So it's a great educational piece and promotional piece. And then lastly, we have a huge focus on trade education through the WIIT Trust, which is the charitable arm of the WIIT DC chapter. And there's really, we focus on 3 primary areas with the Trust. One, they hold Trade 101 events on the Hill to educate lawmakers on individual trade issues so that they have more information available as they look to make decisions. The WIIT Trust also provides scholarships to undergraduate and graduate students, to undergraduate and graduate women who are looking to go into the field of international trade or international issues more broadly. And then also they're starting to do more work on a global level to really help advance women's rights around the world and working with some UN organizations. So, you know, I think we have a lot of great work that we do through the WIIT Trust. Next slide. So one of the things I was asked to talk about in today's presentation was what makes the DC chapter unique. And so I wanted to highlight a few things that I think really that are critical to the DC chapter. And that is that we host what we're starting to call 3 signature events each year. And they are the Holiday Gala and Silent Auction, the Women Ambassadors event, and the annual dinner and award ceremony. I'll talk about each briefly. The Holiday Gala and Silent Auction is an event that we do every December to raise money for the WIIT Trust. And typically what we do is we ask embassy in town to host the event and for the ambassador to be the official host of the event and provide remarks talking about the importance of trade and what that means either for the bilateral relationship between the host government and the United States or just more broadly to the world economy. And at that event we host a silent auction where we receive donations from around town. And the money raised from the silent auction goes to support the WIIT Trust and all of their trade education activities throughout the year. So this year, last December, it was hosted by the Mexican Embassy at the beautiful Mexican Cultural Institute in Washington, D.C., and we raised over $8,000 for the trust. So it was a great success, and we had around 100 WIIT members and non-WIIT members from the D.C. community attend the event. The second big event that we do throughout the year is called the Women Ambassadors event. So we invite all the women ambassadors who are currently serving in Washington, D.C. to an event to honor them. And we schedule it to either occur on the day of or around International Women's Day. And so really we're honoring the women that are serving in Washington, D.C. and that are contributing to international trade around the globe on the International Women's Day. This year our event will actually be on March 6th, so we're currently planning the event. So if anyone happens to be in DC on March 6th, we'd love to have you at the event. There are currently, I believe the number's somewhere around 26 women ambassadors serving in DC, so we hope to have great attendance. And then lastly, every year we have our annual dinner and awards. And the annual dinner really is an event where we celebrate WIT as an organization. It's a seated dinner, and we announce the Woman of the Year, usually a U.S. government official that has really advanced international trade and really contributed through her work as a woman in that role. We also recognize the WIT chapter, the WIT section of the year, the WIT member of the year, really to highlight the great work of all of our volunteers. So it's a great event where we really, as I said, highlight the work of the chapter within the community and what that provides. Something new we've started this year is really trying to increase our engagement with the diplomatic and U.S. government officials serving in Washington, D.C., because we feel like that provides a lot of value back to our members. And so what we started in the fall was, usually we have 2 membership socials a year, one in the fall and one in the spring. And what we started in the fall was we're going to make the fall reception an event with embassy, trade, and economic attaches. So we invited all of the trade and economic attaches from the embassies in D.C. to attend the event for free to meet with WIT members. And so that was a great success, something that we look to do on an annual basis now. And then in the spring, what we're hoping to do is to do that same format, but with U.S. government officials from Commerce, USTR, State Department, and the other agencies in D.C. So again, WIT members have a chance to mingle with government officials. And then lastly, I think our professional development, and I think I talked about that at length on the previous slide, so I won't reiterate that. But I think these events really help distinguish WIT within the D.C. community, where there are events, multiple events, basically every night of the week. So we really do have a lot of competition. If I can go to the next slide, please. Hello, are you still there? I'm sorry, my computer screen just went black. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly. I probably just went to sleep. We are on the next slide.
Okay,
Challenges with
great.
DC faces. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that. So then one of the other things I was asked to talk about were some of the challenges that the DC chapter faces. And I think, for us, because there is a lot of competition in the DC region for events and competition for people to attend, we really have to make sure that we're maintaining quality programming. But that requires a lot of work from our volunteers, and so we're trying to find that right balance between having quality programming that attracts members and non-members to participate, while at the same time trying to recognize that we are a volunteer-based organization and that WIT is only one of many outside activities that our members are involved with, and also that they have a full-time day job, and that, so it's a fine balance that we really have to find. And I think as our events are getting larger, it's requiring more and more time from our volunteers. And so we're trying to find creative ways to maintain that balance so that it encourages people to continue volunteering for the organization and that they don't burn out. Because then we will lose our most valuable assets, which are our members. So some of the ways that we're looking at addressing this is trying to utilize technology in greater ways. So I don't know if anyone on the call has ever looked at the WIT DC website, but in the past it was pretty outdated. It did not have a lot of functionality. And over the last year, we actually went through a very involved process of redesigning the website and trying to add increased functionality to the website so that it would take away from the burdens that our volunteers had in terms of organizing the event. So now we have a new website that we just launched about 6 weeks ago, and a lot of the work that usually had to be done manually by the volunteers can all be managed electronically through the website. So there's less hands-on that has to be done in the planning and the execution of the event. And so I think we're also really hoping that that will decrease some of the time that it takes to execute our events. It also is a great place that will allow access to all of our board materials and other institutional documents that are important for the running of the organization, and it's in a centralized place, so everyone has access to that, so that you don't have to email around to various people. Oh, do you have X document, or do you have this, or do you have that? So it really is a centralized depository for access to things that are crucial to the functioning of the organization. So we're trying to use technology and a more integrated website to help manage and balance our volunteers' times with the organization. And then the other thing that WIIT has done, about 5 years ago, we decided that we needed to bring on a management company to help with the running of the events, because we have quite a large number of events, and the big events that I just talked about, while they are critical to the identity of WIIT, they take a significant amount of time. And so with the management company, we were able to utilize them to handle some of the registration, the on-site logistics, and also to help manage all of our financial information related to that event. So that has also been a big help for the organization to take away some of the stress to our volunteers. So that's really what we're focusing on, is trying to maintain the quality of our programming, but also balancing volunteers' times. And technology really is helping us with that. But I think there's still challenges that we're going to continue to face. I think with that, I'll conclude, and I'd just like to again thank the organization for awarding DC as the OWIT Chapter of the Year. Again, I'm accepting honestly on behalf of all of the WIT volunteers, and we look forward to hosting the OWIT Spring Board Meeting in April, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you both, Meg and Catherine. You both have provided us with some very inspirational presentations, and I think it is absolutely clear to all of our audience why OWIT is so pleased to honor both of you and the WIT chapter as our 2013 award recipients. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the webinar over to our participants. And so if you have any questions for either Meg or Catherine, please do type them in and let us know. Do we have any questions? Okay, well, I have questions. So my first question goes to Meg. Meg, how did you enter in the field that you're in, and what insights or tips do you have for others who are seeking a similar career path?
Okay, thank you, Karen. Well, it is indeed difficult to get into the United Nations. These jobs are very highly sought after jobs. Firstly, you need to have a degree. It's really quite that simple. I have a degree in economics and I have a master's in international relations. These are good foundation degrees, so for the younger people on the call who are considering career options, definitely, sound, robust degrees like economics and international relations are a good foundation to build on. In terms of the work that I'm doing now, which is running the Women into Trade program at the International Trade Centre, what is typically required for that is project management skills. I was brought on to set up the Women into Trade program, to conceptualize it, to raise funds for that, and then to draft projects and implement projects. So 6 years ago I started, I raised $7 million and we implemented projects. in silver jewelry in Peru, and silver jewelry in Mexico, and alpaca in Peru, and we had coffee in Africa, and so on and so forth. But to be honest, what I think really, if I may acknowledge the role actually that OWIT played in all of this, to be honest, when I came to Geneva, I didn't know anybody in Geneva. I'm Australian. We moved here from Amsterdam, London, Zurich, and then here. I went to a small meeting where a woman from, actually it was the DC chapter, was talking about OWIT and what this was and what this could bring to our local community. So I joined, and at that first meeting they voted me president, so I became then responsible for finding venues, and with the executive committee, finding venues, finding topics, and so on and so forth. I tell you, it was a great push into the world of like Geneva, because we had to find, we had to organize events. So like that, I spoke to, I thought, well, who are my heroes in Geneva, in the trade community, and people who are well-known speakers and so on. So we approached them. Mary Robinson spoke at our first meeting. She was then the High Commissioner for Human Rights. I then later on went to work at the High Commissioner of Human Rights when I was the president of OWIT. But also, there's nothing like frustration to affect change. We, within the chapter here, which was Geneva Women in International Trade at the time, we were frustrated that Geneva, base of the World Trade Organization, we didn't see that the gender dimension of trade was being discussed at all in the many forums that the WTO has. So when the WTO organized their first public forum in 2003, we at OWIT here in Geneva got together and organized a panel on women as economic players in sustainable development. We looked at what it is that women contribute in terms of, as I said before, those very important factors, contributing to economic growth and contributing to employment. And we tried to shine the spotlight on what it is women do now, and the fact that if the factors which inhibit women's reaching their full potential were taken into account, then we would be able to achieve even more. So like that, and sometimes it's very simple things, sometimes it's access to information, access to training, these kinds of things. In many of the countries where we work, to give you a very concrete example, you need I expect that many of the people on this call are from North America, to access or to leverage the opportunities under the African Growth and Opportunity Act. You need a certificate of origin. You need a certificate that says, this was made in Kenya. It wasn't imported from China, and I'm not re-exporting it to the United States. It was made here. And many women entrepreneurs quite simply don't know how to go about securing a certificate of origin, for example. So how did I get into this? I think because we were so active here in the community that we who were on the executive committee came to be known as those who understood and were championing this very important cause of the economic empowerment of women through trade. So whilst I was working at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, I later, when I left that job, I started my own consulting company, consulting to multinational corporations on their responsibilities under the Global Compact. At that time, I was approached by the then executive director of ITC, who knew about the work that I'd done on the economic empowerment of women through trade and was still doing, and she asked me would I be interested in setting this up. But I mean, I think it's the profile that we put on the issues, and we were always, without exception, we were always solutions-oriented, showing best practice, showing what had been done in different countries by different groups, showing what policymakers could do, showing what organizations could do, showing what big business could do, that we were viewed as being quite informed, reasonable, positive, and that we had something to contribute. I was president in 2001 and 2002. I'm now working at the International Trade Center, as you know. The president who succeeded me, Cherise Fallis, is working at the Advisory Center on WTO law. She went into that role. She was already a recognized lawyer in the trade field. She is now working there. But I also know that it isn't just that OWIT has benefited me. I mean, when I think of the many others who have jumped from where they are now to other jobs, having played a role on the executive committee it definitely helps. Anya Jakubowski, who you also know as a prior president of OWIT International as well, who was at the time working with Procter & Gamble here in Geneva, is now working for the Coca-Cola company. I'm sure on her CV too as well. I mean, she took our small organisation here and doubled the membership. You know, I think it shows what working on the executive committee shows. It shows that the people, those individuals, can take a vision and implement it. They can take it and make it concrete. And for anybody who's looking to hire anyone, those are certainly the skills that they want to see.
Okay, well, thank you. And the questions are rolling in. So we have quite a number of questions to both Meg and Catherine. So I'm going to try to get to them all before we run out of time. But I just want to let you know that I'm going to take them in as the order that they were submitted. And so we'll see if we can get through all these questions. So actually the next question is for you, Meg, also. What was your biggest professional challenge and how did you overcome it?
Look, if I'm very honest, I move very fast and I work in a very large, slow-moving bureaucracy. What can I say? I think that, and I'm sure that many of us feel these kinds of frustrations at work when we just think, you know, the administrative process were faster and we hope we would be able to move faster. There is an African proverb that says, alone I go fast and together we go far. And I think that's very much a proverb that I've taken to heart in the work that I do, and I have seen that by taking others with me, if you like, we are very much achieving concrete results. We've tripled the amount of funding to the program. I'm now heading a $15 million program, and now I have several project managers implementing the project, and through that they are also having to come to a better understanding of the meaning and the importance of the economic empowerment of women in trade and how to achieve that. So I would say my biggest challenge and how to overcome it, learning that fastest and alone is not the best. You can achieve more concrete results more slowly, admittedly, over time, but it takes time. Change takes time. But if you can take people with you, then you can certainly have a greater impact on the ground.
Okay, thank you. And our next question is to Catherine. Catherine, could you share some of the ways in which WIIT DC markets its programs to the DC community?
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's something, too, that we're trying to always seek new ways to reach a broader market. But our main way of reaching out to the DC community, I think, really falls into three categories. We have a listserv of both our members and non-members that we send out a weekly events calendar to both listservs, you know, with links for registration and details on the event. So that goes out weekly, if not twice weekly, and so we're constantly getting our events in front of people, and I think we have probably around 3,000 people total on those two separate lists that we maintain. I think the second way that we really reach out, we're trying to use social media a lot more. We have a Facebook page and a Twitter account, and we have a volunteer who has responsibility for maintaining those two social media avenues. And so we post our events there and we tweet about them, and we also try then to get other members to tweet about events as well, so we can get, I guess, I actually know nothing about Twitter, but I think the term is retweets, so that you get more hits or something. So that's really another way we do it. And third is word of mouth, I mean, and spreading of our events. So at every event, we always announce what the following events are going to be to encourage those participants to come to another event. And then we are really trying to utilize our board members and our officers to push out events to their friends who may not be members or who may not be active within WIIT. So those are, I think, really the three main ways that we are really trying to reach out to the DC community. But I'd love to hear if anyone has some other best practices that we could incorporate.
Well, I'm going to do something right now, which is probably inappropriate, but I'm going to take the time. We are having a springboard meeting in Washington, D.C. in April 12th, so any of you OWIT members, it is open to all chapters, and if you want to learn about what we are going to be talking, these are some of the issues that we will be talking about during that leadership retreat, and we certainly would like to see as many individual chapter members who can come out and represent their chapters and talk about some of these issues and share our best practices on these issues. Okay, so now that I'm getting past that inappropriate plug, the third question, I guess for both of you women, if you could briefly explain what you see as an essential change in the status of women in the business world.
And who would you like to go first, Karen?
Go for it, Meg.
Okay. Catherine, I think you had it there before when you said that one of your more successful meetings, or the one that really got you in, was about negotiating your salary. And when in the work that I do, I very much underscore that people ask me, so what's the economic empowerment of women? There's really no mystery to this at all. It is about money in the hands of women. It is about income. In many of the countries where we work, women do a lot of the work and yet they receive no pay at all. So it's not a pay gap. I mean, there's an absence of pay. We ask them to produce higher quality, greater quantities, and they can do that. But if they weren't receiving money before, why would you bother try to increase that quality and quantity if it just means at the end of the day you're not going to get paid? So in our projects, we're also looking very much at money in the hands of women. And I would still say, although I have been talking about developing countries, developed countries, it's the same. There's a focus now on women on boards, and this is a good thing, but I do worry about the pipeline. I'm worried about mid-management. I'm worried about women securing good salaries at that level, moving up from the supporting roles. We have women there. We have an increased focus on women on boards, but I'm really concerned about this, about middle management, and ensuring that women are able to move from mid-management even to lower level senior management, and then up and up and up. I don't actually see that change coming through very strongly in the world, in the circles where I move.
Okay, thank you, Meg.
Meg, I would agree with what you've said, and I think one of the interesting things that I've experienced or noticed in my role, and as Karen alluded to, I do travel quite a bit around. And what I've noticed is I think one of the things that organizations like OWIT and even just the advancement of women in the United States and in Europe in the business world, what the greatest contribution that we make to the advancement worldwide is when we travel and we meet with foreign governments. And largely I go into meetings with foreign governments, and there are no women at all in Latin America and Turkey and China, and it's really disheartening to see that it's so male dominated. And even in engaging with companies or other organizations in those countries, they're usually male dominated too. And so to have women in our roles that are able to be ambassadors and almost exporting that, yes, women can be in these roles when they meet in foreign countries with other delegations or business groups, just shows and helps empower women around the world. So it's going to be, I think, a slow process, but we have to just keep hoping that over time that provides windows for people in countries where women have not been able to really, I think, break in at the same level that we have.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is for Meg. It's a very specific question, Meg. The question is, what is the state of the coffee sector in Liberia right now?
Well, that's timely. I was actually in Burundi last week. I run one of the projects that I run is in coffee. We've established associations of women in coffee in Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Burundi, and Uganda. We are working with Liberia. We are working with Cameroon. We are working, and we launched last week. We launched a chapter of the International Women's Coffee Alliance in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Last week. We had a participant from Liberia come to our confidence building workshop last year because we found that when women are face-to-face with buyers, they can sometimes lose their tongues. So what we wanted to do was teach women how to build their confidence so they could become face-to-face with buyers. We later introduced them to buyers, and the women from Burundi signed $1 million coffee contract. And if you go to our website, you can see the video where the women are being paid for the coffee that they have been growing for generations for the very first time, getting paid for the first time. So that's significant. Liberia, well, I mean, there's two ways of looking at this. On the buy side, the price of coffee is probably going to double in the next couple of months because of the droughts in Brazil. Brazil produces, I think it's a significant amount of the world's produce, so that creates market opportunities for Liberia. Liberia has the Libericum bean, which is very special. However, the kinds of infrastructure constraints which impede export are very real at ports and carriage and so on. So I would say that the opportunity is there. For those on the call who are buyers of coffee, and I mean even where I work, we have a cafeteria that buys coffee. I mean, you don't have to be Nestle, Mondelez, Kraft, whatever, to be a coffee buyer. If you think about the company where you work, if you're buying coffee, one way to contribute to the economic empowerment of women around the world is to take an example from take a leaf out of the page of the U.S. government, where you've got your 5% policy of procuring goods and services from women and minority-owned businesses. Try and adopt that in your company. Try and look at your budget, even if it's only $100,000 a year or something. 5%, $5,000, you can do that. And you can start if you want to. I don't know who posed this question, but if you really wanted to drill down, I mean, you could decide that you want to buy coffee from women in Liberia.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I think, unfortunately, we are out of time for our webinar. So apologies to those who had questions that were not answered. I think most of them were directed to Catherine on some chapter-specific operational questions. So whoever that posed those questions, we can ensure to get answers from you. Just submit them to OWIT. You can go to our website and submit the info to OWIT, and we can direct them to Catherine for you, and she can answer them. Or a reminder about our April 12th board meeting, right, where these and other questions will be answered. So I do want to, again, congratulate both Meg and Catherine on these awards. And I appreciate so many folks who turned out for this award ceremony, and I want to remind everyone that this is only the first of our 2014 webinar series. Our webinars are generally held on the third Friday of the month at 12 o'clock noon Eastern. Our next webinar is going to be scheduled for March 21st, and that webinar is going to be very exciting. We're going to have speakers who are going to discuss the opportunities and compliance issues under the African Growth and Opportunity Act. So that's a very cutting edge, very timely topic, and it's going to be a great one. So again, that's March 21st at 12 noon Eastern. For the rest of the year, we have a number of really great topics, including branding for your international business activities. The president of We Connect will be discussing that organization and what they do in order to certify women-owned businesses to position themselves for the procurement opportunities that Meg discussed. We are also going to be having a speaker on doing business in Vietnam. So please be sure to look out for future announcements on these webinars. And again, thank you everyone for participating, and have a wonderful and great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Catherine. And thank you all with DC. I will close out the webinar. Once we close it out, it will close on your system. Thank you all for attending today, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.